stay tuned. We've got an awesome interview with our new friend, Jeff Frumess, filmmaker, runs the page They Came From Lodi. Go check that out. You'll hear all about it upcoming here in a minute. So stay tuned. All right, guys, we're back. Here we are with filmmaker Jeff Frumess. He's currently, has been working on a documentary, They Come From Lodi. You can catch his Facebook Evil Live series on his Facebook page, They Come From Lodi, also named. Man, thanks for being on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
Hopefully I got all that right. That's a lot of information.
I will. Yeah, you said my last name very well. I rated a 9.7 out of 10. So you should be very proud of yourself.
Yeah. Thank you.
I will say that they came from Lodi.
Oh, what did I say?
You said they come from Lodi.
Oh, they came from Lodi.
You asked me if it was correct, so I'm just letting you know.
There we go. They came from Lodi.
They came from Lodi.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, hey, Jeff, before we kind of move on into the 4 questions from hell and stuff, why don't you let the audience know a little bit more about yourself, about your film production company, things that you do, anything like that?
Cool. Well, first, again, Bruce and Roy, thank you so much for having me on your
thank you.
Fiendcast. Honor. I appreciate it. Appreciate your time. Me, I am, so I'm a filmmaker. I'm also just a guy that likes to make stuff. And can I cuss on here if I accidentally cuss?
Yes,
absolutely.
All right. I noticed that when I was doing that Facebook thing, I just, every other word is fuck or just and it's just like it's so hard to keep. You're trying to keep the pockets of you don't want pockets of dead air.
Yeah,
we know all about that.
What comes to mind is fuck.
Right.
But who I am, I'm a filmmaker. I'm out of Westchester, New York, in White Plains. For anybody who's not local, that's like 25, maybe 30 minutes north of New York City, like right above the Bronx. And I used to do this thing, video business media, and used to do a lot of videography sort of stuff. And now I've sort of rebranded as Frumess Films. I put out a feature-length film, my first one, a few years back, called Romeo's Distress. I'm currently working on the second one right now. It's called Wash Away. And I've had this on and off project, which is really my first project, kind of like my great white whale, if you will, if I'm the Captain Ahab of the situation. And that is, it was originally called Horror Business, and then I thought that was too generic, so I changed it to They Came From Lodi, which is a story, a positive, unauthorized fan appreciation, retrospective / history waxing poetically about the Misfits strictly from 1977 to 1983, but including obviously their pop culture impact, but none of that stuff from 95 onward.
Awesome. And I think that's going to be the bulk of the conversation that we're going to be having here in a second. But before we move on, we are going to go ahead and blow the dust off of something we haven't done in a while, and it's coming right to Jeff. And that's going to be the 4 questions from hell. Jeff, are you ready to go?
I'm ready.
All right, here we go. First question. How'd you get into the Misfits?
Funny you should ask, Roy. How did I get into the Misfits? Well, okay, so the very first time I ever heard about the Misfits was I was actually researching the movie Return of the Living Dead sometime in the late 90s maybe, and I remember I came upon this maybe it was like a Geocities site or whatever. Geocities? I've never said that word out loud.
Geosites.
Geosites, see?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Oh, see, I thought it was GeoCities. Oh, whatever, who cares?
Really, Bruce?
Might be GeoCities now that I think about it.
I have no friggin' clue. Anyways, continue.
Not to
I've never
get
seen
so off the rails here, but let me ask you a question. Is it Crozier or is it Kroger?
The grocery store?
Yeah.
I would say Kroger.
Crozier.
Oh, wow.
Nope. Okay. No, I did not know
Tomato,
that.
tomato.
I don't know. All right. In any case, I was on a Geocities site, a geocentrics site, and this guy, I don't know, was some goofy guy covered in blood, but he was talking about other things that he's really into besides Return of the Living Dead. It was that kind of web page in the late '90s, and he kept listing this band, the Misfits, over and over again in a green font. And I thought, what a weird, I never thought of that word before as anything. I was like, the Misfits, what a weird sort of name for a band, whatever. And then fast forward, I will just say I acquired 3 songs in a way that people used to acquire things back in the day that I think is very bad, and you should never, ever, ever, ever do it. But, around the dawn of Napster, it was a different time, different place. I truly believe in supporting independent music at all times. You should go out and buy local releases of independent artists. This is super important, people. But at the time, as a 14-year-old boy, 15-year-old boy, that's all the rage. And I downloaded 3 songs, Day of the Dead, Last Caress, and Ghouls Night Out by the Misfits. I was like, I'll check out these Misfit guys or whatever. And the first song I ever heard by the Misfits was Last Caress. And I heard Glenn sing, I got something to say. Except he did it way better than I just did it just now. And but the funny thing is the song sounded really weird. Like this one song, Last Caress, sounded like, Last Caress. And then these other songs sounded more metally and weird. And I was like, I don't dislike them. They're fine. Oh no, sorry. Ghouls Night Out was okay. It was the Day of the Dead song was a little weird. It's like dun 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 dun. And I was just like, this is weird. This doesn't. Maybe this is mislabeled, because that would happen all the time back in the times of those times. Halloween 3 and whatnot. For a long time, people thought there was a Halloween 3, yeah, that was my first taste. And then I eventually learned that I was like, oh, there's 2 different singers, or there are 2 different versions of the band or whatever. Although if you ask me, accept no substitutes. And that was the very beginning. And then at some point I learned about the skull, and I started to develop this mythology about the band, because they captured my imagination. My first CD was Misfits Collection, and I remember getting that and thinking, wow, this sounds like shit. It just sounded so bad. Like the recording sounded terrible. Now when I listen to them today, I'm like, they're masterpiece. Like they sound like they were recorded at Abbey Road to me in their sonic quality of punk rock crudiness. But at the time it was just like, oh God, this is like I regret buying this CD here. And yeah, but the rest is history.
I think it's cool how you referred to it by its actual name. It's called the Misfits Collection. A lot of people refer to it as Collection 1, but that's what the CD is actually called. It's called the Collection. Wow.
I say Collection 1 too, but yeah, Misfits Collection.
Next question. Why do you like the Misfits?
So this plays into the very last thing that I said, because I think I remember that was going to be the next question. So, that's a really big question, but to continue the story, because it ties right into that. So I'm looking at the inside of the book, and I'm starting to look at the lyrics. I get Collection 2 and whatnot, and I'm reading the lyrics. And this was still the time where your CD booklet was like the world into the band. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Even though the art had shrank from LPs, and not really that much on the internet. A little bit discovering Misfit Central, which is the go-to place for all Misfit related things, along with 138.com and tvcasualty.com and yada yada yada, 1 2 3 this that, and the other. And I just remember thinking in my head, I'm looking at all the different lineups on Misfit Central, and I'm looking at the lyrics of Halloween 2, and I'm going, whoa, these guys are like werewolves, man. Like, I just thought they were werewolves. I thought they you know, because it said metamorphosis, lycanthropy, presume in quam, like, whoa, lycanthropy, whoa, I knew what that is. And then it's like, oh man, like they're talking, and then there's the English translation. So I'm like, oh, you know what? Every time they get a new member, they like initiate them by turning them into a werewolf. Like I just heard, like I just came up with these stories in my head. They captured my imagination. They're writing songs about the things that I love. You know, they're writing songs about like horror movies. That's the first thing on the surface. They're writing songs about like horror movies, but it goes way deeper than that, as I've discussed on some of these Fiendcast things. Sorry guys, I just called it a Fiendcast. I meant to say Facebook Evil Live. Oh, yeah. Please don't sue me. Don't sue me. I just heard the whole sordid tale.
We're not that type. We don't like to do that, man. We don't like to sue.
But you know, they're this band, and you know, again, all music and all punk rock is political on some level. In whatever way, you know, politics does not necessarily have to mean the type of politics that we think of politics as. There's social politics, there's, you know, teenage politics, there's lots of different politics. I'd say the Misfits kind of sing about teenage politics, man. You know, like, you know, talking about like how he's like sexualizing Vampira in, you know, she's the mistress to the monster kid, or he's talking about, you know, I told this story on my broadcast. I'm going to tell it to you here. You know, growing up, if you can't tell, you can't tell out there in Radio Land, but in real life, I have a big schnozola that has gotten slightly smaller because I've gotten fatter. But when I was really, really skinny, my big beak stuck out. And you know, growing up, the kids used to call me Gonzo, or they used to call me the boy from Mars, because I was just really weird and loud and talkative, as you can tell. And they used to tell me to go back to Mars and blah, blah, blah. And then it's just like, here's this guy with a big nose, just like me, singing about, I turned into a Martian. Whoa, whoa, whoa. And I'm just like, fuck yeah, bro. I'm a Martian too.
Yeah.
We're both Martians.
Very
and I'm
relatable.
like, I just was like, this band is made for me. It's made for my wavelength. You know what I mean? And they're just singing about fucked up shit. The songs are great. Obviously, as we know, it's, you know, it's essentially this crooning doo-woppy voice underneath a bed of like Ramones rock, right? So it's like it's like really simple 3-chord punk rock. And it's basically a boat for the sail of which the wind blows into. That is this voice, that is Glenn's voice. And it's just unlike anything else in punk rock. You know what I mean? It really is. You just don't, they just stand out so much from all the others. And then there's the whole visual element. You know, a lot of punk rock bands have visual elements. The Ramones have a little bit of that. You know, the New York Dolls dressed like they were broads. You know, even Iggy Pop doesn't wear a T-shirt because he kind of wants to be like Dionysus. He's like, it's like a Greek thing for him. And then here's the Misfits taking it up. And I hate that when people say, oh, yeah, they're the Kiss of punk rock or whatever. That's what all the old timers say. When I interview guys, they always go, yeah, they're like the punk rock Kiss. I hate that. I think it's so different. They're like the antithetical Kiss, man. Kiss is all about like, you know, capitalism and merchandising and being bigger than everything. And you know what the Misfits is? The Misfits is like living the American dream by being an artist, by being artists. You know, here's a bunch of guys that can't get signed. They're like, fuck it, we're going to put out our own records.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're just like, we're going to fucking, we're going to start printing up our own T-shirts. Everything that they did by necessity because nobody else would help them do it. And they left this legacy, this it's like an archaeological dig, because, you know, and this is something that I personally coined myself that I take credit for. Misfits fiends, like all of us, are the Star Wars nerds of the music world. We like sit here and pore over this shit like we're Star Wars nerds. Oh, this pressing of look at these swirled marbles.
Yeah, right.
This word vital. Oh, he was wearing this spike on his shoulder in this picture in 1981, because that's just what we love to do. But like, so they like create all this really cool shit and then they leave it behind because they explode. You know what I mean? They die. Oh, again, another thing I hear often in the interviews is like, they lived they lived fast, they died young, and they left a beautiful corpse. That original band did. And so it's like all these elements. So they look this way. They have these crazy fucking haircuts. They seem so mysterious, and yet there's so much information about them, and yet they're still so mysterious. It's like no matter how much we learn about this band, we're never satisfied with what we know. We want to know more and more and more because it's just the ultimate thing that especially if you're a musician or a filmmaker or whatever, because the Misfits have what everybody wants, and it's more valuable than money. They have a legend and a mythology that is passed down from monster kid to monster kid to monster kid. I mean, the cred, the clout, the whatever you want to call it, that these guys have, that they created. And they basically were the template. Yes, there's death rock. Yes, there's Screaming Jay Hawkins, which they took from. But they essentially created a template for a genre of music that for many years, before I started to like get to know people within that industry, for many years, I just was like, why bother listening to any horror punk? Because the Misfits did it perfectly. Like, I don't ever need to listen to anything else. And of course, I believe I was super wrong with that because as I would later meet all these incredibly talented songwriters and musicians that just make incredible records and songs and things. And I'm very, I've since changed my feeling, but growing up, that's how I felt. I was just like, I don't need to explore this genre any further because these guys not only invented the template, they perfected it. Sorry, I'm really rambling here. Go ahead. What's the third question?
Well, third and fourth question put together is what is your favorite Misfits song and why?
What kind of question is that? Honestly, come on.
A good one.
Song. Every song is my
all
favorite. Of them. All of them are my favorite song. No, I seriously.
There's no wrong answer.
All, man. I 3 original songs. I love them all. Do I have ones that I like really love? Yeah. But there's no such thing as a bad Glenn Danzig Misfit song. It just doesn't exist. They all have their things. Some personal favorites over the years that have really just, and then the thing is too, as I've spoken about on my thing, this one band is really 4 different bands, right? So there's like 4 different, like almost genres within the genre that they're sort of doing. Genre is not the right word. There's almost 4 or 5 different sounds that they're doing within this band. Every time they have like a lineup change and a visual change, they change tonally and audio. That was a terrible bad word. And so I have different songs for different moods. If I want, what is the fucking like most brutal, like just like barrage assault of a Misfits song that like melts your face off? It's probably going to be Earth AD or Daemonomania or fucking We Bite.
Yeah, there you go.
What's the last one I was going to say from that record? Or Wolf's Blood. And yeah. I'm just like, that's when I'm like, I want to rip your face off.
Yeah, I'm with you. When someone asks me a question like that, I think put myself, I'm at the Misfits show. What song is going to make me want to just punch the most like random dude next to me, and it's probably We Bite or something like that. So I'm with you on.
Dude, We Bite is just like We Bite. I don't know. I'm not sure if they played that live with the reunion, but I
don't think so.
No,
Doyle played it live, and
I was always a big fan of Devil Lock, especially from that, from the Earth AD. That's probably one of my favorite in your face, really thrash, quick song,
It's great. Devil Lock is great. So if I'm feeling really brutal, that's where I'm going. And I think even more so than all those songs, I think Earth AD is really, I interviewed, what's his face from Cancer Slug, and he said this very poignant thing. He said, I mention him here only because I want to give him the credit. I did not think of this. Alex Story. Alex Story said that it's Earth AD is one song in 9 parts, and I'm like, wow, it's kind of like a concept album when you think about it. It's like a concept album about being in hell. And so I think like the thing that really encapsulates it all is really Earth AD, because that build up, and then he goes in with the whoa and just everything fucking just obliterates and vaporizes. But if I want if I'm introducing the band, like sentimentally, Last Caress is my favorite song because that's the first one that I heard, and that's the song. That's like the fucking iconic one. If I want to introduce the band to someone, and I want a song that's going to encapsulate every single quality of what I think personifies the Misfits. What do I mean by personify? I mean, what is the one song that encapsulates just everything that they are about? I go with Astro Zombies. Astro Zombies has it all. It's got some woes. It's got everything that you want in a Misfits song. And then another personal favorite, especially 12 hits from Hell version, Night of the Living Dead, again with those woes.
Oh yeah.
And apparently that's Glenn juxtaposing Night of Living Dead zombies with junkies on the Bowery. This ain't no feeling in my arm. And then if I'm going for something like, if I want something like the things that I've been getting into most recently that are really just like sort of wrapping my mind around are like, probably in the last 10 years, TV Casualty. I just love that fucking song. I love the lyrics in TV Casualty.
Great song.
Yeah, he's just riffing, and then Come Back and Theme for a Jackal, just excellent. So yeah.
Let's kind of get into a little bit here with the project that you've been working on. I believe you said you've been working on, they came from Lodi for about 10 years, you said?
Yeah. So, the origins are even slightly earlier than that. I was working in Chicago for a friend who was making a documentary about George Romero that has still never come out. I hope it comes out someday. And he had interviewed all these people that, if you don't know like George Romero, like you probably don't know who these people are. But for anybody who's a Romero nut, like you're like, whoa, he's got like this guy and this guy and this guy and this guy. And it's so cool to hear them all talking about George. And of course he had like bigger names too. And I just thought, no one's ever done this for the Misfits. And I'm like, and then 2 years later, about 2010, I had this thought. I'm like, these guys are just like, they're starting to pop up on Facebook, and I'm going, man, and so the first one I reached out to was Mr. Jim, the Static Age drummer. I was like, hey man, can I interview you? And he said yes. And if he had said no, I may never have started on what I started on. But he said yes, and that began. That was March 10th. I was thinking about this the other day. It was March 10th, 2010. And since then, so it's been 10 years, I've interviewed almost 100 various musicians, artists, filmmakers, yada, 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 mostly musicians, about the Misfits. And with the idea to basically make this retrospective about the band. And it's evolved over time. It started off as like, oh, this is going to be the most definitive thing ever. And then I slowly realized that was, I started to get a little bit more humble about it and realize that was never going to happen. There's certain people I'm never going to get for this thing. Obviously, I'm most never going to talk to Danzig, Jerry, or Doyle for many, many, many reasons. And started to realize there's still a story here, and there's still lots of these stories that I've collected. I've spoken to a lot of people that are, on the inner circle of this band, and there's still a story here to tell. And then that's evolved too to another point where I'm just kind of like, you know what? Maybe I will use Glenn, Jerry, and Doyle, but I'll just fucking use the interviews that they've given. I'll use the Pusshead tape, and I'll just fucking do this because I'll never, part of me is like, man, maybe I'll just put this out for free on the internet. Like, I'll just take all my material and I'll just do it. I'll just do it and put it out there for everybody to enjoy. And maybe I'll open up like a donation thing. Like, hey, if you enjoyed this, why don't you leave a tip in the tip hat? I don't know.
Well, so what would you say is the major roadblock, or maybe something that's, hindering it from the project to be completed?
Well, like with any documentary project or any, low budget project in general, especially if you're making something by yourself, you're just one person. And, I wish I could say that filmmaking is my full-time job. It's not. I got a day job. I got kids. I got a mortgage. I got a house in the burbs. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, I have other responsibilities. It's just not so. I can only work at the speed of Jeff. I love saying that because it's so true. It's like I can only work as fast as I can go. And there was a long stretch of time where I sort of veered off my path. What happened was I also started to meet all these people through working on this project, and I started to meet like other horror punk guys. My world got bigger than it was. I started getting a little distracted, and I started to get a little frustrated because I had expectations that I was going to, get to certain places, and I couldn't, I'd reach brick walls where I just couldn't push any further. And it was like inertia. And so I was like, you know what? I don't want to say I'm giving up, but I have to take a break. I have to take a long rest. And you know what? It was right around this time that this other band was breaking up, and they were going on one last jaunt across Europe and America, and I went with them and shot a bunch of footage for them that ultimately never materialized into anything. And then I started on the feature-length film Romeo's Distress, which I completed, and then I started working on my next film. But then something happened in 2016. The band got back together, and I was reinvigorated. I was like, holy shit, like hell has frozen over. Like, yes. When they got back together, when Glenn and Jerry got back together, I ultimately realized that anything is possible in life. Anything. And I would use that as an example. I'd go, if Glenn and Jerry can share a stage again, then anything is possible. You want to turn yourself into a floating blueberry pie that sits on the Empire State Building. I don't know how you would do that, but I believe that that's possible because Glenn and Jerry fucking buried the hatchet and shared a stage at Riot Fest. And that was when I knew. I was like, you turned your back on this project and you made a promise. I made a promise to myself that I would finish this thing. I swore an oath, like in Game of Thrones or some shit. I was like, I need to stay the course. I am going to finish this project in one way or another. And it was right around that time that Manny Martinez, the first drummer, came out of the woodwork out of nowhere. We connected. I went down to interview him, and he played me this insane tape that I've been talking about on my broadcasts, and that started things. And then I started doing more interviews. I interviewed a couple other guys, Howie Pyro, who was in Danzig for a while. I did that interview. Bevan Davies, who's a Misfits fan and used to drum for Danzig. A couple other guys. One of Glenn's bass players before the Misfits, this guy Pete, interviewed him. Still have a few more to do. And what I'm doing is I'm restarting the project essentially because the Final Cut draft files are no bueno. So I essentially have to, and I don't remember what's on those tapes. Like I said, I have 100 tapes. I have to go back. I have to listen through. I have to listen to Rocky's tape. Rocky is Jerry and Doyle's brother. And I interviewed him for about 5 hours. And he told me just so much. I mean, he told me the story. He told me the whole, the cemetery story, the grave robbing story from his perspective. It just blew my mind. And so I have to go back. I have to look through all these tapes. I have to look through all these stories. And I have to see how the pieces all fit together. And then I will know what the next step is and make the strides that I need to and get this project out to the people that I'm hoping. And I'm trying to cultivate the audience for that now by doing these Facebook Live broadcasts. Since we've been quarantined, I was like, well, shit. I'm quarantined and, I want to do video content on this page. We have a lot of interactivity on this page, a great community. Let's start to see who some of the faces are. Let's start doing this. So every Saturday for the last 5 weeks, I've been doing what I call affectionately now Facebook Evil Live.
I really liked how you were talking about, especially if anything is possible with the Misfits, reuniting. And that's actually what brought on the inception of this podcast. As soon as me and Bruce heard about they were returning, we're like, okay, check it out. We got to talk about all things Misfits, and we got to go to the first show, which we did. I believe you were also at the first show in Denver, correct?
So funny story, Roy. I was not at the first show. I was at the Chicago
show.
But what I did was I watched the first show on Facebook Live. Some hero. I call them heroes.
Yes, they are. I've seen a lot of those too.
Facebook Living the Misfits from his fucking phone. And even there, and my wife took a video of me watching them on my laptop because she just saw me like I'm kicking my leg. Like such a giddy little girl. And you can't even really see them at all. As a matter of fact, it just looks like the stage is exploding over and over again because the lights and everything.
Yeah.
And you hear the songs and everything kind of sounds good even through Facebook Live. And then I, went to YouTube as soon as the show was over, and I start looking at all these clips, and I'm like looking through all the clips, and I'm going, my God, you know what I just realized? I bet you, or I want to bet that I can find every single song on YouTube and rip it. And let me see if I can sync them all up. And so I synced 144 different clips. Some cell phone, some DSLR, and I put I did some content. It was basically 25 years, 30 years of the Misfits talking about how they'll never get together for about 20 minutes. And it's slowly you watch. It's amazing to see the progression from Samhain all the way up to September with Jerry appearing on a radio show in Chicago to promote the show about how the band is getting back together. And I put that out as like a concert film called Evil Lives. The Misfits AD, and of course Uncle Glenn had it taken down. You can find it still. It's still out there somewhere. You could find it. It's different places. I wish someone would just put it on a torrent or something so that it could just be everywhere for everyone. And I truly think that's why all the phones went in the Yonder cases. My friend posted on my wall. He's like, this is your fault. Like,
so it's your fault. Okay.
Because Jerry was probably just like, this guy. He's like, oh, look at this movie. We should be doing this, Glenn. Come on. They can't agree on the who's a what's a. They did. They were shooting that Chicago show and nothing ever came of it.
Yeah.
It's been
they had some cameras up there in Denver too, right? Yeah. So
I don't think up in Denver. I think, and you have to remember, I just went over this on my own thing, but like, you have to remember too, the urgency with those two shows, because who knew how long this is going to last for?
Exactly.
The volatility of these motherfuckers, those guys would have, it could have imploded after Denver. You know what I'm saying? Or could have imploded after,
we had a long debate about that because I think before we went to the first show, one of the big questions was, do you think they're even going to make it to Chicago? I think we talked about that a lot, but luckily they did, and many, many more shows after that. So,
well, it's just like what they say about war. They say two countries that both have McDonald's will never attack each other. So any capitalist country is not going to attack another capitalist country because they like making money too much. And the same thing with our boys, rightfully so, Glenn and Jerry, that they should be making millions of dollars. They fucking deserve it. They should get more. You know what I'm saying? Like the money is too good not to put up with each other. They'll do it until the guarantees stop coming in. It's never going to stop. I don't care if I ever see it again. I saw the MSG show. I'm good. I never have to see anything ever again after the MSG show. So,
well, I'll tell you what, Jeff Frumess, this has been a real, honestly, dude, we could probably talk for another hour about this stuff. And I just want to remind all the fans out there to definitely check out his Evil Lives episode that are on his Frumess Films Facebook page. And Jeff, let me go ahead and just leave the floor open to you. You want to throw out any plugs or any where people can reach you or contact you? Go for it, man.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you both for having me on. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate your time. This is very fun. I broadcast it broadcasts on Frumess Films, but you can find the direct source where there's a lot of different content at facebook.com/They Came From Lodi, or just look for They Came From Lodi, a Misfit story in your Facebook searching bar, or go to www.frumess.com is my website. And Frumess, Frumess Films LLC is where I'm at, and you can find me on YouTube as well and subscribe there. Blah 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 blah. And brains for dinner, brains for lunch, brains for breakfast.
Right on.
Have some guts, oi, oi.
Jeff, thank you so much for being on the Fiendcast podcast. I want to throw this out there as well. I love your background, dude. It's just awesome.
Oh, what? Oh, these lights? Everybody loves the lights. I don't know what that. I just throw up some lights because it's so dingy in this basement.
Dude, I'm telling you what, man. Every time I watch it, because I'll tune into the videos and I'll comment in there every now and then when someone's coming from the Fiendcast, that's me. And dude, the background is just super, just unique. You know what I mean? I like it. It's very interactive.
I really appreciate that.
Yeah, man.
Remind me, as soon as we stop the recording on this, I want to share a story with you guys that I think you will really enjoy, but is not for public consumption.
Yeah, I have something else to ask you off the air too, so off the record. All right, Jeff.
Fun. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff Frumess. Appreciate it. And everyone stay tuned.